Captain Lee Jun stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova, watching the stars through the wide window. His ship was far from Earth, exploring new worlds in the Kepler system. The crew had been traveling for 3 months, looking for signs of alien life. Today, they found more than they expected. "Captain, we have ships coming toward us," said pilot Choi Dana from her seat at the controls. Her voice was calm, but June could hear the worry underneath. 5 large vessels. They don't look like anything we've seen before. Dr. Park Mina looked up from her science station. She was the ship's expert on alien life, though she had never met any real aliens before. "The ships are big, Captain. Much bigger than ours. And they're moving fast." Engineer Kim Tae checked his readings. "Their weapons are powered up, sir. These aren't friendly visitors." June felt his heart beat faster, but he kept his voice steady. "Open a communication channel. Let's try to talk to them." The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at something that made everyone on the bridge go quiet. The alien was tall and covered in dark scales. Its eyes glowed red and sharp teeth filled its mouth. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding metal. "I am War Prime Thexus of the Velkari Empire," the alien said. "You will surrender your ship and your species to us. We know about humans. You are weak Deathworlders who waste your strength caring for those who cannot fight." Captain June stepped forward. He had trained for first contact, but nothing had prepared him for this. "I'm Captain Lee June of Earth. We come in peace. We want to learn about other species and share knowledge." Thexus made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was cold and harsh. "Peace? Knowledge sharing? This proves you are weak. Strong species take what they need. They do not give things away for free." Dr. Park moved next to the captain. "We've studied many worlds and life forms. Perhaps we could share what we've learned. Science benefits everyone. You offer to give us your advantages?" Thexus leaned forward, his red eyes narrowing. "Only the weak make others stronger. You prove that humans deserve to be slaves." Kim Tae whispered to Dana, "This isn't going well." Dana nodded, her hands ready on the ship's controls. "Should I prepare for emergency jump?" Captain June held up his hand to wait. He tried once more. "We don't have to be enemies. There's room in the galaxy for all of us. We could help each other." "Help?" Thexus's voice grew angry. "We have conquered 47 worlds. We take what we want. We destroy what resists us. And you offer help to your enemies. This is why Deathworlders like you always lose." On the screen behind Thexus, they could see other Velkari moving around. All of them were big and looked dangerous. Their ships were dark and covered with weapons. "Everything about them screamed war and violence, Captain," Dr. Park said quietly. "I don't think they understand peace. Their whole culture seems built on conquest." "I see that," June replied, still trying to stay calm. "But we have to try." He spoke to Thexus again. "If you've studied humans, you know we can be dangerous when we need to be. But we choose not to. That's not weakness, that's strength." Thexus made that harsh laughing sound again. "Choosing not to use strength is the same as having no strength. You will learn this when you serve the Velkari Empire." Suddenly alarms started beeping on the bridge. Kim Tae's face went pale. "Captain, they're locking weapons on us. Multiple ships. And they're launching something," Dana added, her voice tight with fear. "Boarding pods, they're trying to board our ship." Dr. Park looked at her readings. "Those pods have enough firepower to break through our hull. They're not trying to capture the ship intact. They're planning to fight their way in." Captain June realized that talking was over. These aliens didn't want to understand humans. They had already decided that humans were weak and needed to be conquered. The fact that humans offered peace only made the Velkari more certain they could win easily. "Dana, prepare for emergency jump," June ordered. "Where to, Captain?" Dana's hands flew over her controls. Dr. Park looked at her star charts. "The closest safe place is Earth. But Captain, if we lead them there, if we don't, they'll capture us and learn everything about Earth anyway," June said. "At least this way we can warn people." Kim Tae was watching his damage reports. "Hull breach in 3 minutes, Captain. Those boarding pods are coming fast. June looked at his crew. All of them were scared, but none of them were running. Dr. Park was still trying to understand the aliens. Kim Tae was working to keep the ship running. Dana was ready to fly them anywhere. They were good people trying to do good work. They didn't deserve this. Dana, set course for Earth, he said. Dr. Park, send a message home. Tell them what's coming. Jumping in 30 seconds, Dana announced. On the screen, Thexus was still talking. You cannot run from the Velkari Empire. We will follow you anywhere. When we catch you, your punishment will be worse for making us chase you. Maybe, said Captain June, looking right at the alien leader. But you might be surprised by what you find when you follow us home. The stars outside the window suddenly stretched into long lines of light. The Terra Nova jumped into hyperspace, leaving the Velkari ships behind. But June knew they would follow. The aliens were too proud and too sure of their strength to let humans escape. As they traveled through hyperspace toward Earth, Dr. Park worked on her message to send ahead. What should I tell them, Captain? How do we prepare for this? Captain June thought about Thexus and his words about humans being weak Deathworlders who cared for those who couldn't fight. Maybe the alien was right about one thing. Humans did care for those who were weak or hurt or couldn't protect themselves. But Thexus was wrong about that making them weak. Tell them we're bringing visitors, June said. Tell them these aliens think they understand what it means to be human. Tell them it's time to show them what we really are. The ship flew on through space, racing toward Earth with 5 alien warships following behind. The first meeting between humans and aliens had gone wrong, but maybe June thought the aliens would learn something when they saw what humans called home. The Terra Nova dropped out of hyperspace near a blue and green world. Captain Lee June felt relief wash over him as he saw Earth growing larger on the screen. Behind them, 5 dark Velkari ships appeared, following like hunting wolves. Home, whispered pilot Choi Dana, her hands still shaking from the emergency jump. Dr. Park Mina was already sending messages to Earth's defense stations, but as she worked, she kept looking at the Velkari ships with worry. Captain, they're scanning our world. I can see their reactions on my instruments. On the main screen, War Prime Thexus appeared again. His red eyes were wide with surprise and confusion. Deathworlders, what is this place? Our sensors show radiation levels that would kill most species. The gravity would crush our weakest members. Your atmosphere has poison gases mixed in it. Engineer Kim Tae couldn't help but smile a little. He's talking about oxygen, isn't he? And the radiation is just normal sunlight, added Dr. Park. Their species must come from a much gentler world. Thexus continued, his voice filled with disbelief. Your world has violent storms that move faster than our ships. We detect earthquake zones and volcano activity. The temperature changes could freeze or burn our soldiers. Why do you flee to such a dangerous place? Captain June opened the communication channel. This isn't where we flee, Thexus. This is where we live. This is our home. The silence from the Velkari ships lasted for several long moments. When Thexus spoke again, his voice was different, less certain. You live here? All the time? How do you survive? We don't just survive, said Nurse Oh Hyun, who had come to the bridge after treating some crew members hurt during the emergency jump. We grew up here. This world made us what we are. Security Officer Yoon Bin checked his weapons, but Captain June shook his head. No weapons yet, Bin. Let them see what they're really dealing with. The Terra Nova began moving toward Earth's atmosphere. The Velkari ships followed, but June could see they were being more careful now. Their scanners were working overtime, trying to understand how anything could live on such a dangerous world. Captain, Dana said, Earth Defense is asking where you want to land. They're ready to help. June thought for a moment. The Velkari expected to find military bases and weapons. They thought humans were weak, but might have strong defenses to make up for it. If he took them to a military base, it would just confirm what they already believed. Take us to Seoul, he said, the civilian spaceport. Dr. Park looked surprised. Captain, are you sure? There are millions of people there. If the aliens attack, they won't attack, June said, though he wasn't completely sure. Not when they see what's really there. As they entered Earth's atmosphere, the Valkyrie ship struggled with the entry. Earth's thick air and strong gravity made flying harder for them. June could hear Thexus giving orders to his pilots, telling them to be careful. Look at their energy readings, Kim Tae said, pointing to his instruments. They're using twice as much power as we are just to fly in our atmosphere. Their ships are built for gentle worlds, Dr. Park observed. No wonder they think Earth is impossible to live on. The city of Seoul spread out below them as they descended. Millions of lights twinkled in the growing darkness. The Valkyrie ships' scanners would be detecting all those life signs. Not soldiers or warriors, but ordinary people living their daily lives. War Prime, came a voice over the communication channel. It was one of Thexus's officers. Our sensors are detecting massive population centers, millions of life forms, but they don't appear to be military installations. Thexus sounded confused. What do you mean? Sir, these appear to be civilians, families. There are many small life forms that our computers identify as juveniles, and many old ones past fighting age. They're all living together in huge groups. Captain June opened the channel again. You wanted to see where Deathworlders go when they're cornered, Thexus. We're taking you to our sanctuary, where we keep our most precious treasures. Treasures? Thexus's voice was sharp with suspicion. What treasures? Where are your warriors, your weapons, your defenses? Dr. Park looked at the readings from the city below. Seoul was getting ready for the evening. People were going home from work. Children were playing in parks. Elderly people were walking slowly down streets. Restaurants were serving food to families. It was just a normal day in a normal city. The treasures are the people, Dr. Park said softly. As they landed at the spaceport, crowds began to gather, but they weren't soldiers or fighters. They were curious citizens, news reporters, and city officials. Some people brought flowers. Others brought food and drinks for the returning space crew. The Valkyrie ships landed nearby, but their hatches stayed closed. June could imagine the confusion inside those ships. Everything they saw went against what they believed about how species should behave. War Prime, another Valkyrie voice came over the radio. We're detecting something unusual. The population appears to be caring for weak members. Our long-range scans show buildings dedicated solely to healing the sick. Other buildings seem to exist just for feeding people who cannot hunt. And here, came another voice, there are structures that appear to be for teaching young ones. Not combat training. They're learning about stars and art and music. Thexus's voice was getting more confused. This makes no sense. No species. Wastes resources on members who cannot fight. Where do you keep the weak ones that cannot contribute? Captain June stepped off his ship and looked directly at the closest Valkyrie vessel. We don't keep them anywhere special, Thexus. They live here with everyone else. The sick live next to the healthy. The old live with the young, the weak and the strong share the same spaces. Through the ship's communication system, they could hear heated discussions among the Valkyrie. Their scouts were reporting things that their culture couldn't understand. Buildings full of people who contributed nothing to warfare. Resources spent on keeping alive those who were past their useful age. Energy and time spent teaching children things that had nothing to do with fighting. Security Officer Yoon Bin watched the alien ships carefully. Captain, they've been sitting there for an hour. They're not attacking, but they're not leaving either. Nurse Oh Hyun was treating some civilians who had gotten too excited and fainted when they saw the alien ships. They seem frozen, she said, like they can't process what they're seeing. Dr. Park was monitoring the alien communications. Captain, I think they're having some kind of cultural shock. Their whole way of understanding the world is based on the strong taking from the weak. But here the strong take care of the weak, Captain June finished. And that doesn't make sense to them. As night fell over Seoul, the city lights came on. From space, it would look like a giant web of brightness, representing millions of people living peacefully together. The Valkyrie would see families having dinner together. They would see hospitals working all night to save lives. They would see schools preparing for tomorrow's lessons. Finally, Thexus's voice came over the communication channel again. It sounded smaller than before, less certain. Deathworlders, where are your military forces, your weapons, your defenses? Captain June looked up at the alien ships. You're looking at them, Thexus. Every person in this city is our defense. Every doctor, every teacher, every parent, every child. They're what we fight for. And they're what makes us strong enough to fight. The silence from the Velkari ship stretched on. In that silence, Sol continued its evening routine. People went to restaurants. Families walked in parks. Children laughed and played. And in the hospitals, doctors worked to save lives, never stopping, never giving up on anyone who needed help. The aliens had come expecting to find a weak species hiding behind walls and weapons. Instead, they found something they had no words for. Millions of people who lived without fear because they knew their neighbors would protect them, and who were willing to protect their neighbors in return. The sanctuary wasn't a place. It was a way of living that the Velkari had never seen before. War Prime Thexus finally opened the doors of his ship. He had been sitting inside for 2 hours, trying to understand what his scouts were telling him. Nothing made sense. This was supposed to be a simple conquest of a weak death world species, but everything he saw challenged what he knew about life and survival. He stepped onto Earth's surface with 10 of his best warriors. The gravity was heavy, much heavier than their homeworld. The air burned their lungs a little with its strange mixture of gases. But the humans walked around normally, as if this dangerous world was as gentle as a nursery. Stay alert, Thexus told his warriors. The humans must be hiding their true nature. No species survives on a world like this by being gentle. They walked through the streets of Seoul, looking for the trap they were sure was waiting. Instead, they found something that made no sense at all. An elderly man named Kang Soon was sitting on a bench feeding birds with small pieces of bread. When he saw the enormous alien warriors, he smiled and waved. "Hello," Kang Soon said in simple English. "Are you the visitors from space? Welcome to Earth. Are you hungry? I have extra food." The Velkari warriors stopped walking. In their culture, the old and weak were left to die when they could no longer fight. Yet this old human was living freely in the city, and he was offering food to armed enemies. "Where are your warriors?" Thexus demanded. Kang Soon looked confused. "Warriors? Oh, you mean like soldiers? There are some police officers around here somewhere. But why would we need warriors? You don't look like you want to hurt anyone." One of Thexus's warriors whispered, "War Prime. He shows no fear. Is this some kind of human battle tactic?" Thexus studied the old man carefully. Kang Soon looked fragile and weak. He moved slowly and breathed heavily. In any reasonable world, he would have been dead years ago. Yet here he was, calm and friendly, offering food to creatures that could kill him with one hand. "You are not afraid of us?" Thexus asked. "Should I be?" Kang Soon replied. "You look different from us, but you seem polite. My granddaughter always told me to be nice to visitors." Before Thexus could respond, they heard loud noises coming from a large building nearby. It sounded like machines working and people talking urgently. Thexus pointed at the building. "What happens there?" "Oh, that's the hospital," Kang Soon said. "They fix people who are sick or hurt. Very important work." Thexus and his warriors approached the hospital. Their translation devices were picking up words like emergency and surgery and save the patient. This sounded more like what they expected, some kind of battle or struggle. They walked through the hospital doors, ready for a fight. Instead, they found something that stopped them cold. A man in white clothing was working over a small human lying on a table. The small human was a child, maybe 8 years old. Her name was Lee Sol, though Thexus didn't know that yet. The man in white was Dr. Bae-jun, and he was carefully fixing something inside the child's body. "Excuse me," Dr. Bae said without looking up from his work. "Please be quiet. This operation is very delicate." Thexus stared. The human was completely focused on the small, weak creature on the table. He was using advanced tools and all his skill to keep this young one alive. In Velkari culture, a child this sick would be left to die so resources could go to stronger members. "What are you doing?" Thexus asked. "Surgery," Dr. Bay replied, still working. "This little girl has a problem with her heart. If I don't fix it, she will die. So I'm fixing it." "But why?" one of the Velkari warriors asked. "She is small and weak. She cannot fight or work. Why waste your skills on her?" Dr. Bay finally looked up from his work. His eyes were tired but determined. "Because she's alive, and she deserves to stay alive. Because she's someone's daughter. Because she has a whole life ahead of her. Because that's what we do." The Velkari warriors looked around the hospital. Everywhere they looked, they saw the same impossible thing: humans using their best technology and their smartest people to keep alive other humans who were weak or sick or old. They saw doctors working on people who might never be able to give anything back. They saw nurses caring for patients who couldn't even say thank you. In one room, a very old woman, everyone called her Park Grandma, was being helped by a young nurse. Park Grandma was 89 years old and could barely walk. In Velkari society, she would have been abandoned decades ago. Here, humans spent time and energy keeping her comfortable and happy. "I don't understand," whispered one of Thexus's warriors. "They spend their resources on members who cannot contribute to the group's strength." Thexus was beginning to feel something he had never felt before: confusion about the basic nature of existence. Everything he had been taught about survival and strength was being challenged by what he saw here. "Maybe it's a trick," another warrior suggested. "Maybe they keep these weak ones as bait, to lure enemies into a trap." But as they watched, they saw there was no trick. Dr. Bay finished his surgery on little Saul. When she woke up, her parents were there, crying with relief and hugging her gently. The doctor smiled and patted her head, then went to work on another patient who needed help. Thexus watched Kang Soon, the old man, from outside as he visited patients in the hospital. He brought them flowers and talked to them about their families. He read stories to children who were too sick to play. He sat with lonely old people and listened to them talk about their memories. "What does he gain from this?" Thexus asked as the nurse looked surprised by the question. "Gain? He doesn't gain anything. He just likes helping people feel better. It makes him happy to make others happy." This concept was so foreign to Thexus that he felt dizzy. In his culture, everything was about gaining advantage over others. You fought to become stronger. You took resources to make yourself more powerful. You eliminated weakness wherever you found it. But these humans seemed to get stronger by making others stronger. They spent their energy lifting up those who had fallen down. They used their power to protect those who had no power. As the day went on, Thexus and his warriors saw more impossible things. They saw teachers working with children who learned slowly, never giving up on them. They saw young people helping elderly people cross streets and carry heavy bags. They saw strangers sharing food with each other. Most confusing of all, they saw humans being kind to each other not because they expected something back, but simply because they wanted to be kind. "War Prime," one of his warriors said quietly, "what if they're not weak? What if this is what strength looks like when it doesn't need to prove itself?" Thexus felt something cold growing in his stomach. He had assumed that humans were weak because they cared for those who couldn't fight. But what if it was the opposite? What if they were so strong that they could afford to carry everyone with them? As evening came, Thexus stood outside the hospital and looked up at his ships in the sky. He had come here to conquer a weak species, but everything he saw suggested that these humans might be the strongest creatures in the galaxy, so strong that they had evolved beyond the need to abandon their weak members. The thought terrified him more than any enemy he had ever faced in battle. Inside the hospital, Dr. Bay was checking on Saul one more time before going home to his own family. The little girl was sleeping peacefully, her heart now beating strongly thanks to his skill and care. Tomorrow she would be able to play with her friends again, and outside, alien warriors who had conquered 47 worlds stood paralyzed by the sight of what humans called normal life, a sanctuary where strength was measured not by who you could defeat, but by who you could save. The ground started shaking just after sunrise. War Prime Thexus was still trying to understand what he had seen in the hospital when the earthquake hit Seoul. Buildings swayed back and forth. Car alarms started screaming. People ran out of their homes and onto the streets. Thexus expected the humans to panic and run away, leaving their weak members behind like any sensible species would do. Instead, he witnessed something that broke his understanding of the universe completely. Every human immediately became something different, something that made Thexus realize he had been very, very wrong about what humans really were. Firefighter. Namgil was eating breakfast when the shaking started. Instead of running to safety, he dropped his food and ran toward the most dangerous place he could find, a tall building that was starting to crack. People were trapped inside, including some of Thexus's own warriors who had been exploring the city. "He's running toward danger," one of Thexus's warriors said, his voice full of disbelief. "Why is he running toward danger?" They watched as Namgil disappeared into the building, just as another part of it collapsed. The logical thing would be to let the building fall and save the resources for stronger members of the group. But Namgil emerged minutes later carrying an elderly woman on his back, then went back in for more people. On the third trip, he came out carrying a Velkari warrior who had been too injured to move. The alien warrior was twice Namgil's size and weight, but the human firefighter carried him to safety anyway. "Why did you save me?" the wounded Velkari asked. "I am your enemy." Namgil was breathing hard and covered in dust, but he smiled. "You were hurt and needed help, that's enough reason." Across the city, teacher Song Ai was in a school when the earthquake hit. She had 30 children in her class, including several with disabilities who moved slowly. The building was damaged and they needed to get out quickly. Thexus watched through his warrior's helmet cameras as Song Ai organized the evacuation. She made sure every child was accounted for, helping the ones who couldn't walk fast and carrying the ones who couldn't walk at all. When one scared Velkari scout got trapped under fallen debris near the school, Song Ai spent precious time digging him out instead of fleeing with her students. "Teacher, leave the alien and save yourself," one of the older children said. "We don't leave people behind," Song Ai replied firmly. "Not ever. Not anyone." The most impossible thing happened when paramedic Yu Jin arrived at the disaster site. Her ambulance was full of medical equipment, and she began treating injured people. But she didn't just treat humans. She treated Velkari warriors too, using the same care and urgency for everyone. One badly injured Velkari warrior grabbed her arm as she worked on his wounds. "Human female, why do you heal me? I came here to destroy your world." Yujin looked at him with gentle eyes. "Because you're hurt. And healing hurt people is what I do. It doesn't matter who you are or why you're here. You're in pain, so I help you." The Velkari warrior stared at her. In his entire life in a culture based on strength and conquest, no one had ever helped him without expecting something in return. No one had ever shown him kindness simply because he existed. Thexus was monitoring all of this through his communication system. His warriors were reporting impossible things. Humans were running into burning buildings to save people they didn't even know. They were sharing their limited medical supplies with alien invaders. They were using their own bodies to shield weak and injured people from falling debris. But the most shocking report came from social worker Kim Ray. She was helping coordinate the rescue efforts when she heard someone calling for help from inside a collapsed building. The building was ready to fall completely, and going inside was almost certainly death. Kim Ray went in anyway. "She's risking her life for someone she can't even see," reported a Velkari scout who was watching. "War Prime, I don't understand. There's no logical reason for this behavior." They watched as Kim Ray disappeared into the dangerous building. Minutes passed, then more minutes. Just when it seemed like the building would collapse completely, she emerged carrying a small Velkari scout who had gotten separated from his group and trapped when the earthquake hit. The scout was young and scared. In Velkari culture, he would be considered expendable. Just one warrior among many. But Kim Ray had risked her life to save him as if he were the most important person in the universe. "Why?" the young Velkari scout asked her, his voice shaking. "Why did you come for me? You don't even know me." "Because you called for help," Kimray said simply. And when someone calls for help, we answer. Thexus felt something breaking inside his mind. Everything he had been taught about survival and strength was crumbling. These humans weren't just strong, they were impossibly strong. They were so strong that they could afford to risk their lives for others. They were so powerful that they chose to use that power to protect rather than to conquer. War Prime, one of his officers said over the communication channel. Our warriors are requesting permission to help with the rescue efforts. What? Thexus couldn't believe what he was hearing. Sir, they say the humans saved their lives and they want to help save others. They're asking if they can work alongside the human rescue teams. Thexus looked around at the chaos of the earthquake response. Everywhere he looked, he saw humans doing impossible things. They were organizing efficient rescue operations while running toward danger instead of away from it. They were sharing food and water with strangers. They were comforting people they had never met before. Most incredibly, they were treating the Velkari invaders exactly the same way they treated their own people. These aren't weak Deathworlders, Thexus whispered to himself. These are apex predators who have evolved beyond the need to hunt. His communication officer looked confused. Sir? Don't you see? Thexus said, his voice growing louder with realization and fear. We've been thinking about this wrong. We thought they were weak because they protect those who can't fight. But you can only do that if you're incredibly strong. You can only carry others if you're powerful enough to carry yourself and them together. Around the city, humans continued their impossible work. Namgil pulled more people from damaged buildings. Song-A made sure every child in the city was safe and accounted for. Yu Jin treated anyone who was hurt regardless of species. Kim Ray coordinated shelters for people who had lost their homes, and slowly, carefully, Velkari warriors began asking if they could help too. War Prime, his officer said again. What are your orders? Thexus looked at his warriors working alongside humans to save lives. He saw his own people being cared for by the very species they had come to conquer. He watched humans risk everything to protect others, including their enemies. I don't know, he admitted. I don't know anything anymore. The earthquake had lasted only a few minutes, but it had revealed something that would change everything. The humans weren't hiding their true nature. They had been showing it all along. They were warriors, but they fought against suffering instead of causing it. They were predators, but they hunted down problems and solved them instead of hunting other species. They were Deathworlders who had turned their entire world into a sanctuary, and they were strong enough to defend that sanctuary against anything, even their own natural instincts to compete and fight. As the sun set on the day of the earthquake, Thexus stood in a human hospital, watching his warriors being treated by human doctors. The warriors could leave any time they wanted, but many of them didn't want to leave. For the first time in their lives, they were experiencing what it felt like to be cared for instead of feared. And Thexus realized that this was the most terrifying thing of all. These humans were so powerful that they made even their enemies want to stay and be protected by them. 3 days after the earthquake, a new ship arrived from Earth's government. Ambassador Han Wei stepped out wearing simple clothes and carrying flowers instead of weapons. War Prime Thexus watched from his command ship as she walked directly toward the Velkari landing site with no guards, no armor, and no fear. War Prime, his communication officer said nervously. The human leader is approaching. Should we prepare for battle? Thexus looked at his warriors. Half of them were still in human hospitals being treated for injuries from the earthquake rescue efforts. The other half were helping humans rebuild damaged buildings. None of them looked ready for battle anymore. No, Thexus said quietly. Let her come. Ambassador Han Wei walked up to Thexus's ship and waited politely for him to come out. When he appeared with his remaining warriors, she did something that shocked him completely. She bowed deeply and spoke in a voice full of regret. War Prime Thexus, I am Ambassador Han Wei. I have come to apologize to you and your people for the terrible misunderstanding that brought us into conflict. Thexus stared at her. You apologize? To us? We came here to conquer your world. Yes, And we failed to help you understand what kind of world this really is, Hanwei replied. We should have been clearer from the beginning. We should have explained better. Because of our poor communication, your people have been hurt and confused. For this, I am deeply sorry. Behind Hanwei, Dr. Lim Seo was setting up a small medical station. She had come to help any Velkari warriors who were struggling with what humans were calling cultural shock. The difficulty of understanding a completely different way of living. I don't understand, Thexus said. We are your enemies. We came to make your people slaves. Why do you apologize to us? Hanwei smiled sadly. Because you're in pain. You and your warriors came here expecting one thing and found something completely different. That kind of surprise can be very hard to handle. We want to help you understand what you've seen if you're willing to listen. Dr. Lim Seo approached, slowly, her hands empty and visible. War Prime, several of your warriors have asked to speak with me. They're having trouble sleeping and eating. They say they keep thinking about things they've seen here that don't make sense to them. Thexus looked around at his warriors. Many of them did look troubled. They kept talking quietly among themselves about the humans they had met. Some of them had asked if they could visit the hospital again to check on the patients they had helped rescue. What did you do to them? Thexus demanded. Nothing, Dr. Lim Seo said gently. They're just trying to understand a new way of thinking about strength and weakness. It's difficult when everything you believed gets turned upside down. Captain Li Jun approached the group, walking slowly so he wouldn't seem threatening. Thexus, may I explain something? You came here because you thought we were weak Deathworlders who waste resources on those who can't fight. Yes, Thexus said. That is what our studies showed. Your studies were right, Jun said. We do spend enormous amounts of our resources on people who can't fight. We use our best technology to keep sick people alive. We feed people who can't work. We teach children things that have nothing to do with battle. We take care of old people long after they stop being useful for anything. Thexus felt confused again. Then, you admit you are weak? No, said Hanwei firmly. We're incredibly strong. We're so strong that we conquered the hardest enemy any species ever faces. What enemy? Dr. Lim Seo stepped forward. We conquered the idea that some lives are worth less than others. We defeated the belief that only the strong deserve to survive. We won the battle against the voice that says you should abandon those who slow you down. Hanwei nodded. Your empire conquers worlds, Thexus. That's impressive. But we conquered something much harder. We conquered the need to conquer. We became so powerful that we didn't need to prove our power anymore. Around them, the city of Seoul was returning to normal after the earthquake. Humans and Velkari were working together to repair damaged buildings. In the hospital, Dr. Beijun was teaching Velkari medics how to treat their own people with the same gentleness humans used. Little Saul, the girl who had heart surgery, was playing in the hospital garden with a young Velkari scout who had been injured in the earthquake. They couldn't speak the same language, but they had invented a game involving colored stones that made them both laugh. I still don't understand, Thexus said. How does caring for the weak make you strong? Captain June pointed toward the hospital. Because when everyone knows they will be cared for no matter what, they're not afraid. When people aren't afraid, they can do amazing things. They can take risks to help others. They can be creative. They can focus on building instead of just surviving. And when everyone contributes what they can, added Hanwei, even the people who can't fight still make the group stronger. Sol's parents are scientists who discovered new medicines. Kang Soon, the old man you met, taught 3 generations of teachers. Park grandma raised 12 children who all became doctors and engineers. Dr. Lim Seo showed Thexus a tablet with information on it. We've learned that taking care of everyone makes the whole group more successful. Societies that abandon their weak members don't develop as quickly. They waste the potential contributions of those people. Thexus looked at the information, but it was hard to understand. In my culture, weakness is eliminated so it doesn't drag down the strong. But what if what you call weakness isn't really weakness? Hanwei asked. What if it's just difference? Sol was weak because her heart didn't work right, but her mind is perfectly fine. When she grows up, she might discover something that helps millions of people. The old man, Kang Soon, is physically weak now, added Captain June. But his knowledge and experience make everyone around him wiser. The injured Velkari warriors your people would abandon. They've learned things from being hurt that could help prevent other injuries. Thexus felt something shifting in his thoughts. It was uncomfortable, like trying to see in a completely different way. You're saying that what we consider useless people are actually useful. We're saying there's no such thing as useless people, Dr. Lim Seo said firmly. Everyone has something to offer, even if it's not obvious at first. As they talked, more Velkari warriors approached. Many of them looked different than when they had first arrived. Their aggressive postures had softened. They moved more carefully, as if they had learned to be gentle. One warrior, who had been badly injured in the earthquake, spoke up. War Prime, the humans saved my life when I couldn't save myself. They didn't ask for anything in return. They just helped me. Another warrior nodded. I helped build new homes for families whose houses fell down. It felt good. Different from conquering, but good in a new way. Thexus looked at his warriors and realized they had changed. They were still strong, but their strength felt different. Now less angry, more protective. What happens now? He asked Han Wei. That's up to you, she replied. You and your people are welcome to stay and learn more about our way of living. Or you can return to your empire and decide what to do with what you've learned. And if we stay? Han Wei smiled. Then you become part of the sanctuary. You help protect it, and everyone in it. And it protects you too. Thexus looked around at Seoul, this impossible city where millions of people lived together, where the strong protected the weak, where everyone was valued just for being alive. For the first time in his life, he felt something he had never experienced before, the desire to be cared for instead of feared. I think, he said slowly, I would like to understand this sanctuary better. Dr. Lim Seo opened her medical kit. Then let's start by talking about why caring for others makes you feel good instead of weak. As the sun set over Seoul, humans and Velkari worked together to finish rebuilding what the earthquake had damaged. In the hospital, Dr. Bae Jun was teaching alien doctors how to perform heart surgery. In the schools, teacher Song A was showing Velkari scouts how to help children learn. And in the city center, War Prime Thexus, now just Thexus, sat with Ambassador Han Wei and learned about the most powerful force in the galaxy, a strength so complete that it no longer needed to prove itself through conquest, but could prove itself through compassion. The galaxy had many warriors, but only one species had discovered how to make war obsolete, not through superior weapons, but through superior kindness backed by unshakable strength. They had turned an entire death world into a sanctuary, and now they were teaching others how to do the same. The Velkari Empire would never be the same, and neither would the galaxy.